Okay, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the newly released Deepin 20.5. It's been quite a while since I've checked in on Deepin, so I'm intrigued to see how it's all getting on. So I'll read a little bit from the release announcement before we jump straight into it and get this installed. So in Deepin 20.5, a great set of practical features collected from user feedback are developed and released. The stable kernel is upgraded to version 5.15.24, underlying vulnerabilities are fixed, and system compatibility and security are enhanced further. And then we have one of the sort of standout features that I've seen of this release so far, which is the face recognition. So one of the biometric authentication methods is supported on adapted devices. After enrolling your face in Control Center, next time on the lock screen and the login interface, you can log in with your Face ID. So I'm not sure what sort of cameras and things it's going to support, but I've plugged in an old webcam and we'll see how we go and if we can get it set up on my machine. We then have pinned screenshots. So by clicking pinned screenshots before taking a screenshot, the captured screenshot will be sticky on top of all windows and its position can be moved while pinning this picture to your desktop, and you can use other apps at the same time to improve work efficiency. So we'll check that out as well. And then we've got some updates to their mail app. So it supports multiple practical functions such as automatic mail receiving after network reconnection and custom folder management, comprehensively optimize the interactions and replace the framework and plugins with the popular Vue plus Tiny MCE, bringing a better user experience. Now moving on to Deepin's App Store, I remember in previous versions that I've checked out, the sort of translations from Chinese to English weren't great and a lot of it was still in Chinese, so hopefully we're a bit better nowadays. So, new in this release, it offers the entries for sending feedback and asking for updates. When you have an app installation and update problem, submit the issue to the app page directly to the official support and get solutions. What's more, it supports touchscreen devices with one finger and multiple finger gestures. Unfortunately, we won't be able to test out any touchscreen gestures today, but we will go over to the laptop at some point and test out some of the touchpad gestures on the touchpad. Right, so we now have something called Grand Search. I don't actually remember this being a feature in previous versions that I've seen at all, so I'm quite intrigued to see how that's all going ahead. So it looks a bit like sort of KRunner that you'd get on KDE to sort of search through applications and files and all of that good stuff. So the retrieval accuracy and search scope have been greatly optimized, and file types and file extensions can be used as keywords for precise search. So you can see here it sort of goes through the settings, applications and files as well, so we'll definitely be checking that out. And then we have the full changelog here, which I'll link this in the description below for anyone who wants to read a little bit more. So Deepin 20.5 is available to download right now, and they've got a few different download options. I just went straight for the torrent file, which had a file size of around about 3.3 GB for the ISO. With that being said, let's jump into it and get this installed. Right, so you've just booted into the installer, and as always, I am going to be installing this natively, but for those of you who do like to skip the installation parts of these videos, there will be a timestamp down below which will take you straight to the installed desktop. Now, sticking with that topic for just a moment, if you're going to go ahead and try this out yourself, I'd strongly recommend not using it in a virtual machine, because they do use a lot of fancy desktop effects and they actually do warn against it when you load it up in a virtual machine. Now with that out of the way, let's get this installed. So first up, we need to choose our language, which of course is English, and then we're going to agree to the user agreement and go to the next step. Okay, so they're quite interesting with the way they partition their drives. They have quite a lot of different partitions. They use quite a cool sort of scheme where they have a recovery partition as well. So what we'll do is we'll select the drive that we want to install on, and then you'll notice we have multiple different partitions here, with the sort of main file system being ext4, and then also is going to give us a swap partition by default, or that is going to be a partition. And you can see here we also have a recovery partition as well. So let's press next. So we are going to create a backup for this system restore. It will increase the time, and these distributions never stay on the machine too long anyway, but we'll install it just for the sakes of this video. So let's press continue, and that's everything. So I'll pause the video here and then we'll come back once it's finished. It should be quite fast though. Right, so the installation has complete, and it took literally just minutes on my machine. Now you might have noticed there was no sort of user account creation. That will come from the first time you start up post installation. So we'll reboot now and check out Deepin 20.5. Right, so we are now booting off disk for the first time. So once more, we do have to choose our language again. So we'll go next. And now we're going to choose the English UK layout. So let's just scroll down, and there it is. And we'll leave it on the default there, and next. So for time zone, I am not in Beijing. I'm right about there. And then we'll go next. And here's where we're going to create our user account. So we're just going to type in our username. I'll leave the computer name as the default, and now we'll type in our password. Okay, next. And it's now tuning our system, so I'll pause the video and come back once we're at the desktop. Right, so that's taken us straight to the login screen, so let's log in, and boom, here we are. So it is a very attractive Linux distribution. That is one thing that Deepin does very well. So let's just quickly run through this little welcome screen here. So choose the desktop mode. We have fashion mode, which is this one here, where it's slightly raised off the screen with some nice rounded corners. And then we have efficient mode as well. We'll leave it on fashion mode for now, and next. Choose a running mode. So when you're using a virtual machine, this will pop up before you even get into the desktop. So we'll leave it on the standard effect mode, so we have the nice sort of transparent blur effects. In normal mode though, it's going to just box everything off and give you quite sort of an old school kind of vibe. So let's go next. Okay, choose an icon theme. So we'll stick with the standard one for now. We'll go into the sort of desktop settings and see what other themes are included. Okay, that's everything. Right, so first up, before we start taking a look at some of the new features, we'll just have a very brief run through of the desktop for those of you that have never used Deepin before. So you've got your nice little single panel layout with all of your sort of action buttons here, and you can collapse that and then reveal it to show your sound and all of that good stuff. We have our clock, we have our notifications, and then that will open up a nice shade here, and then we can clear them like so, and then we can also click that little bell right there as well. We then have our little recycling or trash bin there, clock, power buttons, etc. And then we have the grand search bar, which we'll spend a bit of time on in just a moment. It's quite nice though. It's got a bit of sort of transparent blur effects from what I can see. I'm not sure what the keyboard shortcut is for that by default, but we'll get into that in just a moment. We then have our pinned applications, and you'll notice a lot of the applications installed out of the box are kind of Deepin's in-house applications. So if we just expand that for the moment, get a nice full screen dashboard there, you can see that there's a lot of applications included out of the box, and even things like your browser and your file manager are all going to be Deepin specific applications, but we'll go into those in just a moment as well. Now if we close that off, you'll notice that we have two little buttons here as well for show desktop, and then we have the multitasking view. So if we've got some windows open, they'll all spread there. So let's open a couple of windows. Let's go for their browser, and let's go for settings, because or the control center, because we want to go into that in just a minute anyway. Okay, so what we can do is just press that button there, get into the multitasking view, and then we have another desktop with a plus sign there, so we can create additional desktops. Now, we'll give it a new wallpaper. I probably prefer if it's sort of inherited the wallpaper you're already using, but that's not too much of a worry. And then you can, of course, drag and drop things about. Now, as far as sort of multitasking with a touchpad, it does use X11, but they do actually have some nice touchpad gestures, which we'll go into once we switch over to the laptop anyway. So I think what we want to start off with is just going into the settings and seeing that everything's set up properly. So we'll go into biometric authentication in a moment, but then we also have accounts, Deepin ID and display. Let's open up our display. So we do have some display scaling here, but it's set to just sort of 1.0 at the moment, which is what I would leave it on. And I think, yeah, we're running a 60 Hertz. Yeah, pretty standard stuff here. We do have a night shift for the color temperature, so we can change it depending on our location, change the color temperature of the screen. Okay, what else have we got? So we have default applications. We can go into here and change the default applications. And of course, most of the default applications are all going to be, once again, Deepin specific applications. Apart from the Office suite seems to be LibreOffice still. I wonder if in the future they're also going to make their own Office suite of applications. We shall see. Now if we go back, we then have personalization. So if we open this one up, here's where we've got all of the nice theming and effects. So we're currently on the light theme at the moment. We can set it to auto to change them depending on the time of day. And then we have the dark theme as well. And if we open up a file manager, that's what it's going to look like with the dark theme. And of course, if you drag and drop it to either sides, you can do that window snapping where it will actually highlight a window, kind of like what they do on sort of Windows 11. And then you can click that and then it will do that for you as well. So let's see if we've got a couple of applications open, how that's actually going to handle it. So let's go for this. There you go. So I quite like that. That's quite a cool sort of workflow. So it will highlight whatever applications on this side and spread them. And then you can just click any application to split them. So that's pretty cool. So let's close these back off. Now let's put that back into an... Oh, I wish it would restore the original size when you dragged it out of a snapped mode. Let's just bang that like that for the moment. So then we also have the nice little accent colors here as well. But what I'll do for the sake of this video is we'll leave it on the light theme because it just tends to pick up a bit better on YouTube. And then we have the window effects. If we press this, You'll notice now all of the sort of fancy effects are gone. We have no rounded corners, everything's all quite blocked off, and it just goes to show how much effects really do sort of affect the Deepin desktop environment, because without those effects it just looks like any old desktop. So let's go back into the effect mode and bang, and now we've also got the different transparency. So by default we've got sort of this sort of nice transparency with a good sort of blur effect, and we can see it on our panel at the bottom here as well. But if we bring it all the way up, it's going to be a solid color, and if we bring it all the way down, it's almost going to be completely invisible. And if we open up our notification shade there, I'll probably leave it somewhere around about there. We then have window, is that the window minimizing effect? So it's on scale at the moment. And then we also have magic lamp again, so borrowing from the kind of macOS Genie effect or whatever. So one thing Deepin does, it kind of borrows a lot from like the sort of popular mainstream operating systems and kind of brings it all together in their own sort of amalgamation of a desktop, which is quite interesting. So we'll leave it on the scale effect for now. Okay, so icon themes, we have Papyrus, Vintage, Bloom Classic, Bloom Classic Dark, and Bloom Dark. Papyrus is quite a good one that works quite well with the Deepin desktop. So if we just click that over, there we go, we've got the nice Papyrus theming there as well. Okay, we'll leave it on the Deepin default though. So let's go back to Bloom and then we'll keep it moving. So cursor themes, we are using Bloom. Fonts wise, Noto Sans and Noto Mono, and we can also change the sizing of it there. And then we have our dock. So like we said, we're in fashion mode. Now, as far as positions, we can pretty much put it anywhere on our screen. So let's put it on the left-hand side. There we go. And then if we also want to chuck it on the right as well, on the top as well, there we go. I think Deepin probably works best with it at the bottom though, so we'll leave it there. And then we have our plugin area where we can remove things as well. Now let's go back and see any other settings that we might want to check out before we start going into some of the new features of this release. So we have our network, notification, sound, date and time. We've got power management. We will go into my laptop and check this out on there as well. But we have power plans here for balance, high performance and power saver. And then again, if we was on a laptop, you could have specific settings for the plugged in as well. Okay, mouse. So I'd imagine when we've got a touchpad connected, a touchpad will also appear here, but again, we'll have to wait until we're on the laptop to check that out. And then keyboard and language, let's make sure our keyboard layout is all correct. So we've got the correct keyboard layout. Input method says US, so I'm going to imagine that we're probably using the US layout. Yeah, so what we're going to have to do is go into the edit button here, and there should be a plus sign. There we go. So we're just going to type in UK, and now we're going to add this one so I can actually use the correct input for my keyboard. So we'll add that, and now we'll bring that to the top, and we won't bother removing that. We'll leave that there, and now hopefully, there we go. So my keyboard layout is correct. It's a bit annoying that we have to do that after the fact of installing, but there we go. And then we have system languages, again, is on American English. And then we have all of our shortcuts. So we'll spend a bit of a time going through this because I do want to see what the default shortcut is for the grand search. So grand search right here is shift and space. Interesting. Okay, so I probably wouldn't use shift and space. I'd probably use alt and space or super and space, but let's swap that over to alt and space. Okay, so alt and space is tied to the sort of activities menu or applications menu of your window. So I think for now, let's try super and space. There we go. So if we go onto another desktop and doing that, you use your left super key and the directionals. Let's have a look at how the grand search looks. So super and space. Okay, cool. So let's try this out then. So let's take a screenshot of something. So let's go screenshot. Right, that's taken a screenshot and the file name will be screenshot. So we're going to see if it will pick that up now. So it should all be indexed. So we're going to open it up. We're going to type in screenshot. And now that's going to open up. So you can do a web search. I'm not usually a fan of web searches built into your sort of desktop like that. And then, yeah, as you can see there, it's picked up the folders and the actual screenshot that we have just taken. I do quite like the way this looks, actually. It's a very nice sort of application menu there. And you can notice it's doing some sort of automatic updating and things in the background, but we'll get into all of the App Store in just a moment. So let's go back. Okay, so what else have we got? We've got Show Desktop, Windows. Okay. And then of course we have updates, and here you can see if we go into update settings, we can see here that it will check for updates, but it doesn't appear that it will automatically download them, but it will clear the package cache and show you notifications, etc. And now in system information, we can see that we are indeed running a Deepin 20.5. It does say the kernel here, so we're using the standard sort of 5.10.101 kernel, and of course Deepin is based on Debian. Okay, so I think what we should probably do then is try out some of the new features. So first up, let's go straight into it with the biometric authentication. And here, because we've got no sort of fingerprint scanner, we've only got the one option here of face. So I've plugged in a webcam. Let's see if this is going to work. So make sure all parts of your face are not covered by objects and are clearly visible. Your face should be well lit. Hopefully we can do it with the hat. Let's give it a go. Next. So it's going to ask you for your password. Position your face inside the frame. Is it not picking up my webcam? Yes, it is. Good, look at that. That was very quick. I'm not sure how I feel about how quick that was. That would probably be quite sort of easy to spoof, to be honest with you. I'll leave that up to someone else to test. Okay, so we've added a face print. Let's log out. We've got the power button here. So we'll go for log out, and let's see how this is actually going to work in your login screen then. Right, so now that we're in the login screen, you can see we've got two options. We have the standard password, and then we have this face here. So let's press that. So it's verify your face. Do we have to press this first? There we go, webcam's coming on. Verification successful. So it won't automatically go straight into your desktop, but you can see we've got the unlocked key here now, and if we press enter, we should be then getting straight back into a fresh desktop. Right, I'm not too sure how I feel about how easy and quick that was to set up. Usually you'd have to sort of move your face around and things like that. Hopefully that gets a sort of bit more improved in future releases. Right, so we're now going to test out the new pinning screenshot features, and we're going to do it including some text as well, because Deepin apparently will let you actually pull text from an image as well, and I haven't seen that working on Deepin yet, so we'll check that out while we are doing it. Now, we are in the Deepin web browser, and by default it will be set to sort of a Chinese search engine of sorts. So if you're using this on a sort of English machine, you're going to want to go into your settings and swap that over if you plan on sticking with the sort of standard Deepin browser. Okay, so let's go and open up Screen Capture Tool and see how this all works. So we've got a little grabber here, so let's go ahead and grab that, including the text. I do like that it shows you the size of it as well at the top left here. Okay, let's go for all of that. Right, so how do we get up the little display thing here? Ah, there it is. Right, so we've got record, screenshot. You can also do scrolling screenshots. Yeah, scroll shots as well. Okay, so you can also just extract the text straight from here as well. So that's actually very handy, but we won't go into that in just a second here. Right, so here is the pinned button. So if we pin screenshots, right, so that is now pinned, got a nice bit of shadowing there, and it sort of pulled it sort of on top of your windows. And now we should be able to open up any old application, and that will stay floating on top. Okay, interesting. I'm not too sure what use case you'd use that in, but it's quite a cool effect to have built into your sort of screenshotting desktop tool. And again, I do like the fact that you can do quite a lot when that toolbar pops up, like scrolling and extracting text and all of that good stuff. So I think what we'll do, we'll take this screenshot. So what do? Options, let's save it to our desktop and save. Bang. There we go, screenshot is finished. And would you look at that? It will then automatically, when you press the extract text thing, it will pick up all of the text here. There seems to be some other sort of random bits and pieces here, but that is actually really quite cool. And tips, the clearer the image is, the more accurate text it is. So that is pretty decent. So if you're reading an old image with some text on it and you want to sort of input that into your own file, I think that's pretty decent. So if we close that off, and then go into our sort of images application, which is called Album on Deepin. So it should pick up that screenshot. Perhaps we're going to need to move that into our actual pictures folder. Let's go into our file manager, go into pictures, and then we have our own screenshots folder here. So let's just paste that there. There we go. So that will automatically scan your pictures folder by the looks of things. So if we click on that, So again, we have all of these additional options, and again, we have the extract here. So you can do that from any picture in your gallery as well as just grabbing it straight from the screenshot tool. That is actually pretty decent. I do like that. Okay, we're going to spend a little bit of time on their App Store now, and hopefully all of the translations are working these days. So we're going to pop open the Deepin App Store, and we'll try and install a few applications as well as checking out the sort of submit feedback on the actual apps page. And there we go. So it actually has got the correct language for most of them. TeamViewer is still in the Chinese there, but a definite improvement from the last time that I used Deepin with the App Store here. So let's say we wanted to install Kdenlive, and there we go. So if we just click on Kdenlive, and if we scroll down, there should be a submit feedback. Is it going to be this little bad boy here? It is indeed. So we can submit feedback right in the actual App Store itself. So very quick and easy to grab. You will need your Deepin ID, which I'm not going to create, but that's how simple it would be if you wanted to go ahead and use a Deepin ID. So we're going to go ahead and install Kdenlive just to show you how it actually works with installing applications from the Deepin App Store. I've got a feeling from these images here that the actual sort of theming is going to look a bit funky on our desktop, but we shall see. Now, if I remember rightfully, I don't think Deepin includes any of the sort of multi sort of platform application packages sort of managers like Flatpak or Snap. Let's just double check that actually. So we'll open up our terminal and let's type in Snap, no Snap, and let's type in Flatpak. No Flatpak. So if you wanted to go ahead and install either of those packaging formats, you have to install them yourself, but it should work without any issues whatsoever. Now let's go back into our App Store and see how we're getting on. So we have a nice little timer here letting us know, well, not a timer, a percentage marker, and it says downloading, but we also have a pause button there as well. So I'm going to pause the video and then we'll come back once that's been installed and we'll make sure it's all working. Okay, that's now been installed, and as you can see, we have now actually populated our notification center with some notifications, and we can just clear all of them bad boys away. Right, let's open up Kdenlive. So it's got this nice little icon theme there, and actually it doesn't look too bad there. So there we go, Kdenlive is all installed without any issues, and you'll find most of the applications you need in here. And like I said, if you want to use Flatpak or Snap, you can go ahead and install them yourself. Now for the updates here, we've got some updates. Again, still not great on the translations, but let's go ahead and see how the updating works. We'll press update all, and again you'll get the same little notification sort of signifier of the downloading and the progress. Populations will pop up here once they're finished and you are good to go. Now we'll very briefly run through some of the Deepin specific applications before we jump over onto the laptop and then check out a few more things on there before we start to wrap things up. So let's open up our application launcher with the left super key. So we've already checked out the browser. The file manager, I've not spent too much time with it, but I think what we'll do is when we're on the laptop, we'll see if we can set up sort of auto mounting with my Samba shares and access that within that, but we'll get into the file manager in a bit more detail in just a moment. We then have the App Store, so we have their little music app as well, and then we have movie, screen capture, image viewer, album, we have draw. There we go, we can go ahead and draw. Not my sort of application, but there we go. We have document viewer, we have the text editor, and then we have their mail application, which has the new sort of features included for sort of automatic retrieval from a sort of drop connection, etc. And then the built-in email accounts, we've got most of the major ones there. We've got Gmail, we have Yahoo Mail, if people still use that. And then we have some ones that I've never used before. And then we have other, and then you should be able to grab your sort of IMAP and all of that good stuff as well. So we're going to exit that, not to the minimize system tray. We're just going to exit it entirely. Okay, and we then have voice notes that we've checked out before. We have a download manager here. Okay, that's pretty cool. I don't really tend to use a lot of download managers these days, but as it's actually included in your desktop, that's not too bad of an addition. And we've got a manual simple scan trash control center. We have the system monitor, so we can see exactly what's going on with our machine and what's being used. So we're currently using memory wise of 1.8 GB. We will do a reboot in a moment to check out the RAM, and then we'll jump over onto the laptop. So let's close that one off. And then anything else I want to quickly touch on. We then have our package installer, we've got the full LibreOffice suite, and let's just quickly see what Writer looks like on our desktop with the sort of Deepin theming and stuff. So let's close that off. Okay. Doesn't look too bad there. We haven't got sort of any fancy rounded corners or anything like that. We should have automatic spell checking working with our correct dictionary. We do indeed. And we should be on a sort of newer version of LibreOffice now. And we are on version 7.04.2. So not super new, but not too much of a worry there. So let's close that off. And I think we'll do a reboot and then we'll check out the RAM and then we'll jump over to the laptop. Right, so we installed HTOP before we actually did the reboot, so we can see how much RAM this uses on a fresh boot with the out-of-top of HTOP. And when you consider just how many features and sort of effects and stuff that we do actually have included on Deepin, the RAM usage is actually really quite impressive. So it's sitting at under 700 MB, around about 672. And I've used, window manager distros and XFCE distros that are actually higher than that, with not even half the features that the actual Deepin desktop has. So that's really quite impressive. So I think now we'll jump over onto the laptop. Okay, so we've got a little hand cam action going now, and we're going to use this to test out some of the touchpad gestures. So one thing that I've noticed with the touchpad is if you use 4 fingers just to tap your touchpad, it will go ahead and actually open up your application menu. And now we're going to use 4 fingers just to swipe across the touchpad to go into different desktops. There we go. So it doesn't feel quite like one-to-one tracking that you would find on Gnome 40, but for quick sort of gestures it seems to do the job just fine. We then also have the option of using 4 finger swiping going up or down, and that will get you into sort of like the multitasking view. Or it can also just go ahead and show you the desktop when you go down. Now there's a couple more touchpad gestures that I want to show you, this time using 3 fingers. So if we've got an application window open, like this one for example, if we use 3 fingers, we can then actually split it from the left and right sides, which is quite cool to have built into your touchpad. Now staying on the laptop, we're now going to click our battery indicator and see what options that's going to go ahead and give us. Okay, so you can see that we don't have all of the power plans that we did have before. Perhaps my device just doesn't support it, but we have the balance and power saver. So we're currently on the power saver. And then we have some power saver settings. So we can auto power save on low battery, and then we can auto power save on just battery. And then of course you have the additional options of what you're going to do on battery as well as plugged in. Now one of the things I forgot to mention about their grand search is that you can also search now by file extension. So all of the screenshots by default save in PNG. So if we type in .png, that will then search and pick up any of the files that end in .png, which is pretty handy as well. Now just some final comments on the file manager. I actually don't mind it. It does pretty much everything you'd want, standard features from your sort of file manager. Like, you can always just go in, open in terminal and all of that good stuff. And also using Sif's utils, I was also able to auto mount my SMB shares over from my server, and then you can bookmark that straight into your sidebar like you could on say Nautilus and all of that good stuff. So not really too much to complain about with the file manager as it is. Right, so that wraps up my refreshed look of Deepin, this time featuring the newest edition of 20.5. So my main idea of this video was to mainly just kind of check out the new features in this newer release, which I think we've mostly done, and also to check out some of the other features that I've missed in previous versions of Deepin. If you want a full kind of run through of the actual Deepin and the desktop itself, I do have videos on the channel which are a lot longer than this one that go into that as well. I just didn't fancy retreading old ground in this video. All in all though, I do actually think as a desktop, Deepin is probably one of the most feature rich in the sort of Linux environment. And even outside of that, it does do a lot of cool things that other operating systems and distributions don't. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. And if you've really enjoyed it, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. Join the Discord, there's a link in the description below and in the pinned comment. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.